The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
Striking nurses return to work in Boston. Meanwhile, the Senate fails to curb AI's impact on Medicare. And today on the show, the president of the American Federation of Musicians, Local 4 in Northeast Ohio. Welcome to the Monday, July 20th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Len DiCosimo will be our featured guest on the show today. Len is president of the American Federation of Musicians. That would be AFM Local 4. Here's a website you want to go to, afmlocal4.com, afmlocal4.com. And here's the good news. At the recent 103rd convention of the American Federation of Musicians, this happened in June, in Ottawa, Canada. At that convention, Len was elected to the AFM International Board. Good stuff there. Also want to point out that Karen Suarez Flint was elected to be the first female vice president. We featured Karen on the show, I want to say maybe about 2 months ago. All of our shows are archived at awfpodcast.com. So Len is going to talk about that. Also, he's going to talk about the negotiations going on as we speak with the Cleveland Orchestra, trying to get a new collective bargaining agreement. And yes, artificial intelligence is one of the issues they are talking about, and he's going to get into that as our featured guest on the show today, Len DiCosimo, president of Local 4 of the Cleveland Federation of Musicians. Also, he's been involved for many, many years with the North Shore Federation of Labor. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. Thousands of nurses, about 4,000 of them, at Brigham and Women's Hospital, this would be in Boston, returned to work last week, ending the largest nursing strike in the history of Massachusetts. The nurses walked off the picket line after a one-day strike on Wednesday, July 8th, following a 4-day lockout. They went on strike and then they locked them out. Now, the hospital brought in 1,300 replacement workers to cover shifts during the lockout. That strike ended without a contract, but the nurses indicated they are willing to strike again if they are forced to by management. The nurses stated primary concern remains safe patient care, number one. You know, on last Friday's show, we had the Alliance for Retired Americans on. We had the president of the Ohio chapter, Norm Wernett, and one of the issues we talked about was this program that started under the Trump administration called WISER, W-I-S-E-R. And what that is, it's a pilot program used in about a half dozen states where they use artificial intelligence to deny claims. Pretty much the case. Well, guess what? The Senate had an opportunity last week to say no to this, and they didn't. They have a comment here today from Richard Fiesta, executive director of the Alliance. He said, for generations, American retirees have relied on traditional Medicare for guaranteed affordable health care. Well, today, 50 members of the U.S. Senate failed to protect that promise and voted to allow for-profit AI corporations to come between doctors and their patients. The guaranteed health care that Americans have earned through a lifetime of work should never depend on whether an algorithm agrees with their doctor. Since the WISER pilot program began in January, Medicare beneficiaries and providers in the affected states have reported delayed treatments, unexplained denials, and approval decisions that can take weeks. Rich goes on to say, for many older Americans, these delays are more than an inconvenience that can worsen health outcomes and jeopardize their independence. We are deeply disappointed that the Senate failed to act, but we thank the senators who did stand with older Americans by voting to end this harmful experience. According to a national survey of voters age 60 and older commissioned by the Alliance in April, 70% oppose using artificial intelligence to make treatment eligibility decisions. It's bad enough right now from the insurance companies, and this is just making it worse. The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions voted along party lines to advance President Trump's National Labor Relations Board nominee James Macy to a Senate floor confirmation vote. The committee also voted to advance the renomination of current Democratic board member David Prouty. Now, Macy moved through his committee hearing without much resistance. If confirmed, he would become the third and final Republican member needed to secure the board's Republican majority and likely revisit Biden-era board precedent. Now, the Senate must confirm at least one of the nominees before Prouty's current term ends on August 27th, or the board will lose its quorum to hear cases again. A Guardian newspaper report estimates that nearly 20% of games during the FIFA World Cup were played at what they call wet bulb globe temperatures. What's that? That's above 82 degrees Fahrenheit, the level at which the World Professional Soccer Players Union says games should be delayed or postponed. Another 20% of games were played in cities that met the threshold but were mitigated by air-conditioned stadiums. The hottest outdoor match, France versus Paraguay in Philadelphia, may have exceeded 93 degrees, while the quarterfinal match between England and Norway, that was in Miami, that one kicked off at roughly 90.5 degrees, well above the threshold. FIFA mandates a 3-minute cooling and hydration break during games when they meet or exceed 89.6 degrees. However, the union hopes to secure more rigorous protocols for dealing with excessive heat in future competitions. And just in case you missed it, Spain beat Argentina. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the president of Local 4 of the American Federation of Musicians.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LIUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. The Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers are proud to be a title sponsor for America's Workforce Radio. The Insulators Union is leading the way in the mechanical insulation industry, fire stopping, and infectious disease control. Regarded as North America's energy conservation specialists, these professionals are known for their professional work and dedication. You can learn more about the Insulators Union at insulators.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, to loggers, and miners. Back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families. All working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter.
America's Workforce appreciates our sponsor, the Columbus Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents more than 18,000 workers from 19 affiliated local unions and district councils.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to our featured guest right now, Len DiCosimo, no stranger to the show. He's one of the many sponsors we have here on America's Workforce on behalf of the American Federation of Musicians, Local 4 in Northeastern Ohio. The website you want to go to is afmlocal4.com. Len, how many years as president of Local 4? Well, how many years as a union guy? And you know what? I'm dating you here, brother. You know that. How many years as a union guy? How many years as president of Local 4?
First off, nice to be with you again, friend. I've been president of Local 4 since 2005. I first was appointed to the board in 1996. So it's 30 good years this year.
And how is Local 4 doing in Northeastern Ohio? I know it's been rough, especially since post-pandemic here, but how are things shaping up so far?
Shaping up well. We're coming out of the pandemic, and we're all looking at all of our negotiations for our collective bargaining agreements since the pandemic. And the largest one we have is the Cleveland Orchestra contract, which expires this summer. It expires at the end of August. We've already had a first set of negotiations. We've exchanged financial presentations, both parties, and Local 4 delivered our first proposal. That's already happened this summer. And we have a whole schedule of meetings through the end of the summer season.
You've been at this a long time, as you indicated. Cleveland Orchestra is known around the world. Let's be honest. It's the best band in the land. I remember that line from years past.
That's right.
Yeah. So that being said, obviously you have accomplished musicians. They deserve to be paid well. And it goes across all labor unions. It gets tougher and tougher. You know, there's wages, there's health care. You know, I think about when you started back in 96, the cost of health care, where we are 30 years later. There's a good example right there. So what do you see? I mean, what's a track record been with the Cleveland Orchestra?
That's right. You've hit one of the nails right on the head, Flash. The legacy costs are something that negotiations, I think, of any stripe have had to deal with over the decades. And we've been able to negotiate in terms of pension and retirement benefits, where we're both in a good spot. And I know that the orchestra is going to be looking for more compromise in health care. What we're looking at is to maintain our status among the legacy orchestras that exist in the world. And what's interesting to us this year specifically, Flash, is that Boston, Chicago Symphony, Philadelphia Orchestra, and the Cleveland Orchestra are all negotiating this year. And another thing I'd want to point out is that the symphony sector is one of the most unionized workforces in the United States. We feel that we treat our work as athletes, and what the orchestra members are looking for in this negotiation are things like relief weeks, specifically for section string players, your violinists, your violists. Flash, let's be honest, right? The great saying, they're the ones who play the most notes. They're the ones that are most susceptible for injury. They're the ones, particularly the high strings, that hold the instrument in the most unnatural position. And that's something that we're pursuing this negotiation that's rather, a uniqueness of our industry.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that too, because, we talk about safety on the job on the show almost every day, workplace injuries. And when you talk about workplace injuries, you think of working on some assembly line or the building trades, you're climbing ladders, you're going into trenches, but you don't, the American public is not aware of the musicians that suffer injuries. And this is a good example. So thank you for calling attention to that. Now, you were just elected to the international here, the international board. And this was at in Canada a couple of weeks ago. Talk to me about that.
The AFM had their 103rd convention in Ottawa, Canada. First off, we haven't been in Canada in over 50 years. So it was great to cross the border and really demonstrate that we are an international union. Hey, we also have a local in San Juan. There's a San Juan Symphony that is unionized, and we represent them. It's a real working convention, and we have elections for all of the titled officers at the international level, as well as amending bylaws. There are 9 international offices, and there are 5 newly elected officers, of which I'm one of them. I believe we've had Karen Suarez Flint on the program, Flash. She is the secretary-treasurer of Local 10208 AFM in Chicago. She's the AFM's new vice president and the first female to hold the position.
So you've been at these conventions before. Obviously, this is the one where you got elected to the international board. You got to feel pretty good about that. What does that encompass? Well, what's your role going to be now?
At a minimum, there are quarterly meetings where you deal with the mundane clerical aspects of mediating issues between locals, members and their locals. There's that segment of it. There's also a representation at conferences, making presentations. If you're appointed to committees, you work on educational programs for the members or for the local officers. There's things of that nature. There's legislative work. There's organizing work. There are issues and duties that will be divided.
I have to ask you the question, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, artificial intelligence. It's affecting everybody right now. I had a really good conversation recently. In fact, we're bringing him back. Duncan Crabtree Ireland, who is a chief negotiator for my union. That would be SAG-AFTRA. Okay. Yeah, and he was talking about what was happening a couple of years ago when they had a tentative agreement, and then somebody posted something on YouTube saying, and it was using Duncan, saying, right, don't ratify this agreement. It's no good. And people are saying, hey, what's going on here? But in your neck of the woods here with musicians, and I'm sure they're trying to use artificial intelligence in certain parts of like the Cleveland Orchestra. I'm sure that's going to come up with the negotiations. What do you say to that?
We are looking at, that falls under our electronic media language, and we are certainly looking at intellectual property rights of the musicians, what they have performed. You know, AI in our industry, replaces musicians. It replaces the composers. It replaces lyricists. It 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 steals from intellectual property right. Flash, the parallel I was thinking about over the past few weeks is it equates to the lost jobs that happened when reality TV started taking off a generation ago. Because there, you lost work in set design, you lost work in costuming, you lost work in wigs and makeup. That was also a strike against, a real hit against working people in this industry. AI is going to affect every industry across the board. And it's something we're all looking to each other to find ways to preserve the working people's work.
So, Len, I have to ask you, were there any workshops, any discussions about AI at the 103rd convention for the American Federation of Musicians?
We discussed AI in the conferences that led up to the AFM convention. Traditionally, local conferences meet at the AFM convention the few days before, and that's where we have workshops on pension, artificial intelligence, collective bargaining 101, things of that nature. It's something that's constantly on our radar, constantly we're negotiating with, constantly we're working with the Department of Professional Employees. The AFM has that relationship, working with SAG-AFTRA and all the entertainment unions.
Yeah, it's so important.
We're all searching. The general public should know this. The general public should be wary of spending their discretionary dollars on artificial intelligence, on canned music. Go to the checkout line and support the worker who's the cashier, as opposed to going and paying at self-checkout. All of those things, we need to educate the public. Thanks for this platform.
Oh, I'm telling you. Yeah, you go to the store today and say there's 10 checkout lines, you probably see one or two cashiers. The rest are all self-service. I mean, that's the world we live in here. Len, I want to use this as a call to action, and we've been running your commercials here on America's Workforce for years, and I thank you for the sponsorship. And the old line, it's better in a union, and the AFL-CIO uses that a whole lot. And I just want to take an opportunity for you to sell Local 4 here, because with what you just said in this podcast, I mean, there's a lot of challenges for everybody, but we're talking about musicians and those who are in the entertainment venue. I want you to talk about why they should join Local 4. What do you think?
All right. Well, what we do is have a larger voice for the independent musician wherever they work. And I think that voice includes all of the members and all of their perspective. The one thing about organized labor, to me, it doesn't matter what the affiliation is and what the job description is that there is a camaraderie. It's a professional family, Flash. How we refer to each other as siblings. And I think that's more important to realize in the workforce than a biological family, frankly, because you hold each other and then consequently your employers to a higher standard automatically because of the company you run with. And I believe that those musicians who are Local 4 members get to have that expanded knowledge and interact with members of the musicians who play at Playhouse Square and all of the shows that come through, of the Cleveland Orchestra members, of the musicians who specialize particularly in musical theater, particularly in teaching at the conservatory level. As you know, as a voice artist yourself, the business is small. And it's getting smaller because of these challenges, these technological advances. And when we band together, we protect the individual artistry that we all have, whether you act, whether you sing, whether you dance. And that's why I think the whole union movement is so important, not only individually, but collectively to society. We show relevance to the individual, and we show relevance to the community at large.
Well said, my man. Well, I ran into an old friend that you have talked about. Yeah, that you talked about on the show many, many times. We had a WMMS reunion about a week ago.
Okay.
And good old Alex Bevan, the skinny little boy from Cleveland, Ohio, showed up there. And I want to tell you, he's taken a step back. He's still performing, but he's in his 70s right now, but he looks really, really great. I told him that you're going to be on my show, and he said, I love Len DiCosimo. He's done a lot for Northeastern Ohio musicians.
He's a lot of fun. Hey, Flash, we just played an ox roast in Manawa this weekend. Alex is looking good. He has the walking cane. He's still riding. That's the one thing that just impresses and should receive admiration, is that this is just a fine example of a world-class artist who lives and resides in Northeast Ohio. And I'm so honored to represent him. I'm so honored to play with him. And there are so many players like that here in town. But Alex is simply outrageous, and he has a following, and he's just everybody's favorite camp counselor, as you know.
Yeah, those of you listening, you might want to check out his Facebook page, Alex Bevan. That's Bevan. All right, we're going to leave it on that note. Len DiCosimo, president of Local 4 of the American Federation of Musicians in Northeastern Ohio. The website, AFM Local 4.com, AFMLocal4.com. You stay safe. Good luck on those talks with the Cleveland Orchestra. Stay in touch, okay, brother?
Thank you, Flash.
And that'll be it for yet another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up tomorrow, the United Steelworkers. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.